Two clicker or not two clicker? 'Tis the question. Okay, welcome. I'm Dr. T. Welcome to my office, and random intros aside, if you are teaching a course that has a fairly significant math component, one of the classic teaching styles is to put a problem up on the board, have the students work it, then you work it. And well, there are some ways you can facilitate this. You kind of like to know, are they getting the problems right, in which case you can move on, or they're not getting them right and you really need to go back a step because they're having issues. So one of the approaches is you can use an audience response system, colloquially known as a clicker. There's a couple of different brands. Some of them are very limited. Some of them got a bunch of options. There's also bring your own device online things such as Top Hat, where it's not really an audience response system as much as it's a website that allows you to link in. There's a bunch of different brands on these topics. And the idea here is now the student can respond. You get some information about how they did. Did they do well on your question? Did they not do well on your question? Maybe you're doing multiple choice. Maybe you're doing numeric answer. You got options. Depends on what you've got. And well, I kind of want to talk about my experience using these things and give you some ideas if you want to use them, or maybe they're not going to be a good fit for you. So for starters, we're well into the range of formative assessment. These aren't quizzes. These are probably not going to get graded. You might be grading them. There's a whole controversy on whether or not you grade formative assessment, or if you do grade it, how you are. Do you simply grade it for completion? Do you grade it for accuracy? Because if you're grading for accuracy, it starts turning into a quiz, in which case it's summative assessment, which that's maybe not ideal. So there is a whole debate, and I don't really want to get too much into the debate other than to say, if you grade it, it creates a stronger incentive to do it, but it also creates a punishment for doing it wrong, which is kind of this cross goals. Formative assessment isn't really meant to be punishing, but you also want to get the students to do it. So for myself, if it's homework, I will grade that. It's not worth much, but I will grade that. I'll put a little bit of a grade on there to get students to do it. But if it's an in-class activity, I'm probably not going to grade that. Also, if you're going to grade it, you need to handle your logistics. A lot of your audience response systems, especially the fancier ones, are definitely going to be able to handle logistics for you. But do you want to go for one of the audience response systems? Maybe you want to go for another option. So the simplest, bare bones, least costly and, well, least feature-rich approach is, hey students, here's a problem, work it in your notes. I'll work it on the board in 3 minutes. You get no feedback at all. Doesn't cost anything. Presumably the students have enough paper on hand. And yeah, they get some practice if they do it. How many of them do it? I don't know. I don't know if they've done it or not. Once again, you get no feedback on this approach. So this is definitely an option, but you get zilch when it comes to feedback. So yeah, I will do this. Don't get me wrong. I definitely will do this. But it's definitely not kind of the plan A approach. This will be done in situations where, I don't want to break out the audience response system, or, it's just kind of one or two quick questions, or basically, I don't really intend on them doing this. I really am intending on doing this on the board, but I want them to take a stab at it. Tell them, give it the old college try. Now, the second one, which is fairly low cost and limited features, is going to be something like a dry erase board. You can purchase small dry erase boards, 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17 size. You can get really cheap. You purchase a gigantic cheap dry erase board and slice and dice it with a circular saw. There are options here. And so now you hand your students one of the boards, hand them a dry erase marker, maybe a wash rag to erase it with, and say, okay, students, put your answer on the board and hold it up. I'll give you some feedback. This works great, especially like in chemistry with Lewis structures. A lot of your audience response systems are not going to handle it. Some of them will, actually. I believe Top Hat claims they can. I've never used Top Hat. I don't have experience with it, but I think I've heard them say they can do Lewis structures, which is definitely interesting. Once again, don't know, never used it. But you want to do Lewis structures. You want to do diagrams. Hey, let's give me, a pressure temperature diagram for phases. So everyone draw me a phase diagram. You can do that. If you can draw it, you can do it on a whiteboard. Now, of course, now you have to go look at that thing. I have found typically there's a couple of issues with doing the whiteboards. One, there is still no real way of grading. I mean, I guess you could have a seating list and mark them if you wanted to grade them. Typically, I don't, so that's not a drawback for me, but that's something you want. If you want it to also take attendance for you, once again, it's not going to do it. It's a piece of wood with some epoxy on top. However, the other drawback that's a little bit more significant that I found is twofold. One, you have to provide these. The students are not going to bring them because there's no real incentive for the student to bring it because, once again, there's no way to grade it at all. So odds are the students are not going to bring it. Whereas your audience response systems, you can easily set up hey, if you answer one question today, you get the participation point or something. Also, they typically are smaller and students do tend to bring those a little bit better. So basically, you need a classroom set of these. Now, this does lower the cost of the students. Once again, you got one classroom set, that's going to work for years. Swap out the markers every couple of semesters, probably every semester, depends on how heavily you use them. But your classroom set, is it a true classroom set? I've got 64 students in a classroom. My pack of 32 of these things is, gigantic. I can barely carry it, and that's enough for every other student. They have to share. So that's one issue. The other issue is that there's a little bit less anonymity. Student holds it up. Now you can just simply get, okay, I see it. Okay, I see it. That is one approach, or you can try again, etc. But either way, other students are still going to get a gist of what that student's doing, or even if they don't, that student may feel that they don't have complete anonymity here. And so they'll be a little bit more reluctant to actually answer. Typically, this is more profound with somewhat weaker students. So I find quite often, even if I have enough boards for every student to have one, my answer rate is usually on the 50% response. So about half the students actually answer, about half the students won't. It does vary. It depends on the class, depends on the topic, depends on how confident they are. The more confident they are, the more likely they're going to answer. It seems to be a lot more personally committed to doing the whiteboards. Now, you could go audience response system. The downside here is now you or the students are going to have to buy these dumb things. And instead of being a couple of dollars for a dry erase board, we're talking $20 to $50 or more for one of these systems. Nowadays, there's even attempts to go for some kind of like online app-based system. So there's a subscription fee. So the price starts adding up quick here. But you get metrics of how your students have done. You may very well use these for your assessments. I like using my audience response system for exams. I will give them a word bank of like 100 words, numbered, and then I'll give them maybe 20 questions with a blank in each one. And so it's not multiple choice. I mean, it is multiple choice. You have 1 through 100 to stick in that blank. So for certain types of questions, for certain types of learning objectives, it works fairly well. Has this nice kind of understanding level of Bloom's taxonomy. You're definitely usually kicking it up a little bit above knowledge, although maybe it depends on exactly how you word the question. So I like doing that. You can grade these things relatively easy. The students feel they're a lot more anonymous. At least that's what I'm getting the vibe of. And so I usually get somewhere around 2/3 to maybe 80%. So 2/3, 4/5 of students responding. Once again, if you're not grading it, it's not 100%. And even if you are grading, it's probably not 100%, but then you just get drama. Like, oh no, I forgot mine. Drama. I don't want drama. So with these guys, if you don't grade it, you don't get the drama. So my experience, you probably got maybe 2/3 to 4/5 of the students will respond on these. So you get a lot more students responding. Therefore, you probably also have a lot more students actually doing the activity that you're doing, which hopefully that's going to gain some improvement, and you get some feedback about what's going on. You actually see metrics like, okay, how many students, okay, 20% of the students who actually responded got the right answer. Okay, I'm going to need to cover this again. I need to adapt. 98% of the students got it right. Instead of you trying to keep in mind, like, okay, they got it right, they didn't, they quickly, if you got a lot of students trying to keep everyone straight in your head, it's just not going to happen. Now, the fourth choice is one I just recently learned about. My boss is a fan. I am really skeptical of this one. It's called Emporium Learning, or Emporium Teaching. Basically, the students pull up their online homework. And in the middle of class, they're doing homework. The idea is the instructor floats through and provides help. Maybe an SI or a TA floats through around in the middle of class. My personal thoughts are that I think I could use class for something better than the online homework and make the online homework online at home. But, you know, that's another option. It depends on what you want to go. Apparently it's been popular in some math departments. I've heard definitely mixed between really good things and complete disaster. So it sounds like implementation is a huge deal on getting that to work right. So yeah, I don't have any experience with that. I'm afraid I'm probably going to get experience with it, whether I want it or not, but hey, we'll see what the future holds. So with that said, if you are teaching a math-heavy course, you almost certainly want the students doing problems with you. You've got options, and your students, your class size makes a huge difference. If you've got 300 students, it's audience response system, or I guess Emporium, all the way. No low-tech options. You're going to have to go high-tech. If you've got 18 students, hey, low-tech's cheaper. Maybe it's going to be a better choice for you. Depends on what you're doing, depends on your students, depends on your cost sensitivity of students. Can you buy a full classroom set of audience response systems? Hey, that's an option. I've definitely seen that. So things for you to think about. And with that said, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in later videos.